This episode of Brains on Games, we'll talk about Versa, a handmade die rolling game about matching patterns. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald. In this episode, we're going to talk about a game that was sent to me fairly recently by the folks over at Saberwolf Games. Now, I did, ages and ages ago, talk about a Saberwolf card game with bluffing and pirates called Yo-Ho, You Only Hang Once. But this one is a handmade game about die rolling and pattern matching, and it is called Versa. Now, interestingly, Saberwolf Games, they're selling this through their Etsy store. So it's easy to find, but it's not available widely, I don't think, across different local gaming stores. But it is a two-player game. You can play it with kids. Well, I think younger kids are going to get it, but I'd say 9 and up, maybe 8 and up, and games play in only about 10 minutes to half an hour. Let's take a deeper look at Versa by Saberwolf Games. Now, you may have been able to tell as I'm holding up the box to this game. The box is made of wood that's got printing on both sides of the top. And really what the box holds inside, it did come with some bubble wrap to keep the dice in place, but it's got these squares that are holding the dice. So Versa is a light game that's all about trying to discard cards by matching the patterns on those cards. So you're playing one against the other. Your opponent's going to be trying to match patterns on the cards in their hand, and while you're trying to disrupt their work and match your patterns at the same time. You'll win a game of Versa by getting rid of all of your cards. Players are going to start the game with a blank dice board like this, and they start with a hand of 5. You've got a draw deck, and there's a discard pile that started at the beginning as well. And then you're just trying to match these patterns in the different colors on the dice. So you've got T's and L's and pluses here, and X's, and this they refer to as an S. And the corners of the card show the patterns in different orientations, which is helpful, I think, for the younger kids and for those who don't have very good mental rotation skills. In this game, what you're doing is you're rolling all of the blank dice in a row or a column in order to try and match the patterns in the colors that you have on those cards. So at the beginning of the game, everything's blank and you can roll from anywhere, and maybe you'd want to choose the middle just so that you have lots of options. So you're going to take only the blank dice out, and then you're going to roll them. I've got my dice thrown rolling tray here so that it's not too noisy if I roll these dice. Then you're going to start putting the dice in any order you want back into the row that you rolled from. So I've still got a blank one here. There's a yellow, and there's a red swirl over there. So after the first roll, the board looks something like this. Now, what do you do next? Because that's pretty random if you're just rolling dice and then placing them. But you next get to turn a die to match an adjacent one. So maybe I want to make one of these match the green because I've got this green S down here. And then you swap the positions of 2 dice. So there's a roll, there's a turn, and then there's a swap. Once you've rolled and turned and swapped, then you check to see if the pattern that you've made matches any of the patterns on your cards, and they can be in any orientation. That's why you've got the different orientations on the corners of the cards here. And then you check to see if there's all of the same face up in a row or a column. If all of the dice match, you flip those so that they're all blank. So if you want to get some blank faces, you want to make all of those dice in the row match. Eventually, you're going to wind up with a board that looks something like this. Now, if for some reason none of the faces are blank, well, then there's no dice that you can roll. The game ends and nobody wins. But that didn't usually happen in the games that we played. In fact, I don't think there was a single game where it did happen. So eventually, you're going to have this kind of board. Then you're going to do exactly what I was saying earlier on your turn. You're going to pick just the blank ones from a row or a column. You're going to roll them. You're going to put those back in with whatever faces were face up. you're going to turn one, you're going to swap one, and then you're going to check and see if there's a match. And in this case now, finally, I've got these clovers face up. They match that card. So now I can discard this card. All of these dice are going to be turned back to their blank side. So this is how you get more blank faces on the board, is by matching those patterns. Now I'm trying to match mine. I've got 5 cards at the beginning of the game. My opponent's trying to match his. He's going to be trying to mess with me as well and roll. Like if he sees what patterns I'm looking for, he's going to be trying to roll those dice or switch them around so that I can't make my green S. But now I've got 4 cards. I still draw one from the deck at the end of my turn, and then I can discard one of them. So your hand can shift. If you've got a card, there's not too many, I don't know, there's not too many reds, or maybe there's not too many yellows on the board. You might want to get rid of your orange cards, for example. You discard that one, but you've already drawn another one. So now, though, for the rest of the game, I'm only going to have 4 cards to choose from when I'm making the pattern. Eventually, you'll find yourself down to 1 card, and then you still draw and discard. So you might hang on to, maybe I'm working hard to make this pattern, but if my opponent really messes me up, when I draw my next card, I might decide to keep that one instead. And maybe I'm going to go for the greens again and go for a green X. It's like this constantly evolving puzzle. And that's the skill that we're talking about here, is that you're using those visual spatial problem solving skills. This is a spatial problem. You've got those random dice that you can assign, but then you can move things around and manipulate those dice a little bit. You've also got some mental rotation skills that you're using here, because this T, you can match it like this upside down. You can match it right side up. If it's sideways, either way, those are all matches. So you can't just think of a T right side up when you're looking for completing patterns in this game. I do like that you've got the little reminder in the corners of those cards, just to show you, hey, don't just think in one direction. You have to think in multiple directions. So you're using those spatial skills and those mental rotation skills. Although it doesn't have to be mental, because you can see the different orientations on the card, and you can physically turn the card. That's what I found myself doing sometimes, physically turning the card, especially the S's. I found those little S's. I didn't want to, you can't flip it. It has to be just a rotation. So once we had a backwards S, and we had to double check to make sure that we were matching the right thing. Of course, you're trying to create these patterns. So there's a pattern recognition component to the game as well. And then you're really invoking working memory here. Now, working memory is the whiteboard in your mind where you keep information. But because you've got these 5 cards with 5 different patterns, probably, or the same pattern in different colors, it's one where you have to remember multiple, like, you're not just looking for one match. You're trying to keep 5 in your head at the same time as you're looking at that board to solve the puzzle and to start to discard those cards. Well, now I've got 2 X's in red or green. That's fairly easy to remember. There's not too much in the way of working memory demands there. But when you've got 5 cards, it is more of a working memory exercise. Now, you don't have to just rely on memory. Of course, the cards are there in your hand, but you're sort of looking back and forth as you're trying to figure out how to place those dice that you've rolled. Final thoughts about Versa. Well, this is a puzzle game, and it changes every single turn. The puzzle might change significantly every single turn. So you're going back and forth with your opponent, and you're trying to each build your own puzzles on this little board with the dice. The die rolls, of course, add some randomness to it, but the fact that you can then turn and swap adjacent dice mitigates that randomness a little bit, but you might find yourself sometimes pushing your luck. You might say, oh, in this row, there's only 2 blank dice that I can roll, but oh, if I get a green one, that's going to solve all of my problems, and I'm going to be able to match the last card. It gets harder when you only have 2 cards left, because you have fewer options to match, and your opponent's probably going to figure out pretty quickly what it is that you're working on, and then, of course, they're going to mess with that. And there is that real balance between building your own pattern and messing with your opponent's pattern. So there are some take that elements to the game. But it's got that handmade box. It's got the dice are bright and colorful, and everything fits together quite well. So the components, this is well done, I think. And having a box that's made of wood and that's part of your game, it keeps everything organized and lined up and straight, which I like. You might want to have some sort of a dice tray so that the dice aren't rolling off the table if you're rolling 4 or 5 of them all at once. But this is a neat little puzzly game. If there are downsides, it is a 2-player game. So if you've got, 3 kids, you're not going to be able to play this game with them all at the same time. You may be able to set up a tournament or something, but with games that last up to half an hour, that's going to take a minute to get through. There's going to be somebody who's waiting 10 minutes or 20 minutes before they get to play the game. So it is a 2-player game for 2 players only. And it is a game where, like, take that mechanism of I'm going to change your pattern. I'm moving your dice around so that your plan's not going to work. Like, that is a big component of the game. It's necessary that take that thing. Now, it's not like you're planning way ahead. They're not very complicated plans that you're working on that your opponent's going to be able to mess with. But there is that take that component to the game as well. But we had fun playing Versa. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got this wooden box in the mail, but I think that the box with the emblems on it is great. Everything fits together nicely. The cards, again, and dice are colorful. What a fun game. Thanks so much to Saberwolf for sending this little puzzle my way. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll put a link to the Saberwolf Etsy store in the show notes below the video. But of course, you can leave comments or questions or suggestions in the comment section below the video. And you could always email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.